Marcus Chun wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, the familiar weight of his wrench comforting in his grip. The repair bay of Station Gamma 7 hummed with the usual sounds of interstellar commerce. Cargo haulers groaning under massive loads, the hiss of hydraulic systems, and the constant chatter of alien voices conducting business in a dozen different languages. As the only human mechanic on this remote trading post, Marcus had grown used to being the odd one out. The Zelkari merchant ship had limped into the station 3 hours ago, trailing smoke and making sounds that no healthy engine should ever make. Captain Vextar, a 7-foot-tall reptilian with scales that shifted color when he was agitated, had practically begged Marcus to take a look. Most mechanics would have quoted him a fortune for emergency repairs, but Marcus had a soft spot for desperate spacers. He knew what it was like to be stranded far from home. Deep inside the ship's engine compartment, Marcus squeezed through passages designed for beings much smaller than humans. The Zelkari were a compact species, averaging about 4 feet in height, which made their ships feel like crawling through air ducts. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he traced the source of the engine problems to a cascade failure in the plasma coupling array. It was then that he heard it, a sound so faint he almost missed it over the hum of the ship's systems. A tiny, pitiful mewling like a kitten in distress. Marcus paused, his enhanced human hearing picking up the subtle noise that the Zelkari crew had probably missed entirely. Following the sound, he squeezed through an even narrower maintenance tunnel until he found himself in a forgotten storage compartment. There, huddled behind a stack of supply crates, was the smallest alien creature Marcus had ever seen. It looked remarkably like an earth cat, with soft fur that seemed to shimmer with an opalescent quality, shifting between silver and pale blue. But this creature was impossibly tiny, no larger than Marcus's thumb. Its proportions seemed slightly off, the head a bit too large for its body, the limbs shorter than they should be. Despite its alien origin, Marcus recognized the signs immediately. This little being was suffering from dwarfism. The creature's breathing was labored, and Marcus could see it was severely dehydrated and malnourished. Its tiny chest rose and fell rapidly, and its large, luminous eyes were clouded with pain and confusion. It tried to move away from Marcus, but could barely lift its head. The sight tugged at something deep in the human's chest, that uniquely human impulse to protect something small and helpless. Marcus had always been different from other humans in that regard. While his species was known throughout the galaxy for their aggressive nature and warrior instincts, Marcus channeled those protective impulses differently. Where other humans might fight wars or hunt dangerous predators, Marcus fixed broken things. Ships, equipment, and apparently tiny alien creatures in distress. Moving slowly and speaking in the gentlest voice he could manage, Marcus extended his hand toward the creature. "Hey there, little one. I'm not going to hurt you." The universal translator on his collar would convert his words, but he suspected tone mattered more than language right now. The creature, Marcus decided to think of it as Pip for the moment, recoiled initially but was too weak to flee. When Marcus's massive human hand, scarred from years of mechanical work, gently scooped up the tiny being, Pip's resistance faded. Marcus could feel how light the creature was, practically weightless, and how its tiny body trembled with fever. "What are you doing back here, buddy?" Marcus whispered, examining Pip more closely. The creature's fur was matted and dirty, suggesting it had been hiding in the ship's bowels for some time. Marcus noticed small wounds on its paws, as if it had been trying to dig or claw its way to food or water. The realization hit him like a plasma bolt to the chest. This little being had been abandoned or had somehow become lost in the ship's massive cargo holds. Marcus had heard stories about the pet trade in this sector. Some species collected exotic creatures, keeping them in deplorable conditions or abandoning them when they became inconvenient. The thought that someone might have discarded this tiny, helpless being because of its physical differences made Marcus's jaw clench with barely contained anger. Humans were known for their emotional intensity, and, Right now, Marcus felt the full weight of his species' legendary protective fury building in his chest. But anger wouldn't help Pip right now. Action would. Marcus carefully tucked the tiny creature into the breast pocket of his work coveralls, making sure to leave it open so Pip could breathe. The creature settled against the warmth of Marcus's chest, its trembling gradually subsiding. Marcus could feel the tiny heartbeat against his ribs, rapid but growing steadier. He needed to finish the engine repairs first. The Zelkari crew was counting on him, and stranding them here would solve nothing. But every few minutes, Marcus found himself checking on his tiny passenger, offering gentle reassurances in his rumbling human voice. The plasma coupling repair that should have taken 2 hours stretched to 4 as Marcus worked with unusual care. Every movement was calculated to avoid jostling Pip. Every tool selected to minimize noise and vibration. The other human mechanics on the station often joked that Marcus treated machines with more care than most people treated family. But now he was extending that same careful attention to a living being. When Captain Vextar came to check on the repairs, his color-changing scales shifted to curious patterns as he noticed Marcus's unusual gentleness. "Is everything all right, human Marcus? You seem different today." Marcus glanced down at the small bulge in his pocket where Pip was resting. "Just being thorough, Captain. Your ship's been through a lot." He wasn't ready to reveal his tiny passenger yet. First, he needed to understand what he was dealing with and what kind of help Pip actually needed. As Marcus made the final connections to restore the ship's engine power, he felt Pip stir in his pocket. The tiny creature poked its head out, revealing those remarkable luminous eyes. For the first time since Marcus had found him, Pip seemed alert and aware of his surroundings. The little being looked up at Marcus with what could only be described as curiosity, perhaps even gratitude. "There you go," Marcus murmured, running one finger gently along Pip's tiny head. The creature's fur was incredibly soft, and Marcus could feel the delicate bone structure beneath. "We're going to figure this out, little guy." When the engines roared back to life with their healthy, powerful thrum, Captain Vextar's scales shifted to pleased patterns of gold and green. "Excellent work, as always, human Marcus. Your species' mechanical intuition never ceases to amaze me." Marcus nodded his thanks, but his mind was already racing ahead to his next challenge. Pip would need specialized care, food appropriate for his species and size, medical attention for whatever condition was causing his dwarfism, and, most importantly, safety. Marcus didn't know what species Pip belonged to, what he ate, or even if the atmosphere humans breathed was safe for him long-term. But Marcus Chun had never backed down from challenge in his life. Whether it was coaxing life back into a dying engine or nursing a thumb-sized alien creature back to health, the approach was the same. Careful observation, methodical problem-solving, and the stubborn human refusal to give up. As he cleaned up his tools and prepared to leave the Zelkari ship, Marcus made a silent promise to the tiny being in his pocket. Whatever Pip needed, whatever it took to help him thrive, Marcus would find a way. It was what humans did. They fixed broken things, protected the helpless, and never ever gave up on something they cared about. The first step would be getting Pip back to Marcus's workshop, where he could set up a proper environment for the little creature. Marcus had converted a corner of his repair bay into a small living space for himself, complete with a kitchen, sleeping area, and even a small hydroponics garden where he grew vegetables to supplement the station's food dispensers. It would have to do until he could figure out exactly what Pip was and what kind of specialized care he needed. As Marcus walked through the station's corridors, he could feel Pip moving slightly in his pocket, apparently comfortable enough now to explore his temporary shelter. The tiny creature's trust was both humbling and motivating. Marcus had always worked alone, preferring the company of machines to the complex politics and social dynamics of the various alien species that populated the station. But now, for the first time in years, Marcus wouldn't be alone. He had a patient who needed him, a tiny life depending on his care and ingenuity. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the determination building in Marcus's chest. He would figure this out one step at a time, with the same methodical approach he brought to every challenge. The real work was just beginning. Back in his workshop, Marcus carefully transferred Pip from his pocket to a makeshift habitat he'd quickly assembled from spare parts and materials. Using a clear storage container, Marcus had created what he hoped would be a comfortable temporary home. He'd lined the bottom with soft fabric scraps, installed a tiny heating element to maintain warmth, and even rigged up a miniature ventilation system to ensure fresh air circulation. Pip explored his new environment with growing energy, his luminous eyes taking in every detail. The tiny creature moved with surprising grace despite his proportional differences, and Marcus noticed that while Pip's body was indeed affected by dwarfism, his intelligence seemed completely unimpaired. When Marcus placed a small dish of water in the habitat, Pip approached it cautiously, then began drinking with obvious relief. The next challenge was food. Marcus had no idea what Pip's species normally ate, so he started with small portions of various options: fruit puree, vegetable matter from his hydroponics garden, even tiny amounts of protein paste. To his relief, Pip showed interest in most of the offerings, though he seemed to prefer the sweeter fruits and avoided anything too acidic. Dr. Kthara, the station's Zelkari medical officer, nearly dropped her scanner when Marcus appeared in the medical bay with Pip the next morning. Her scales shifted rapidly through confused patterns as she tried to process what she was seeing. "Human Marcus," she said carefully, "that appears to be a Felixian kitten, but it's impossibly small. Adult Felixians are typically 3 feet tall at the shoulder. This creature could sit in my palm." Marcus felt a surge of relief at finally having a species name to work with. "So, you know what he is? That's fantastic. What do Felixians normally eat? What kind of environment do they need?" Dr. Kthara's scanner buzzed as she examined Pip from safe distance. The tiny creature sat calmly in Marcus's cupped hands, apparently unafraid of the medical equipment. Felixians are omnivores from the Kepler 442 system. They're highly intelligent, naturally curious, and form strong social bonds. But Marcus, her scales shifted to concerned purple patterns. This level of size reduction suggests a severe genetic condition. In Felixian society, such individuals are often abandoned. They're considered unable to contribute to the community. The casual way Dr. Kthara delivered this information made Marcus's jaw tighten. Abandoned? Because he's different. Felixians are a practical species. Marcus. They live in harsh mountain environments where every member of the community must be able to hunt, climb, and survive extreme conditions. A Felixian with dwarfism would be seen as a burden. Dr. Kthara paused her scanning to look directly at Marcus. "However, I notice this little one appears remarkably healthy despite his size. His vital signs are strong, his responses are normal, and there are no signs of the organ failures typically associated with such severe dwarfism." Marcus stroked Pip's tiny head with one finger, and the creature leaned into the touch. "So, there's nothing actually wrong with him except his size?" "That's unusual," Dr. Kthara admitted. "Most genetic conditions that cause such dramatic size reduction also affect organ development, neural function, or lifespan. But this little one seems perfectly healthy, just miniaturized." She stored her scanner